we should all give ourselves a big round of applause for doing the tough job that we do, where there's stuff that we want to do, but there's stuff that we end up doing, right? So a big round of applause for us, right? We're in a tough industry. And there are some ways where we can kind of reduce the gap between what we'd really love to do and what business or the folks kind of on the other side get us to do. And we are to blame for a lot of what happens because we very often falter at the step of not conveying what we've done well enough, right? Which is why all of this. Now, that's my topic, the story in the data, and you have to tell it. Because if you do a good job of it, trust me, everything else, the methodologies, the technology, AI, machine learning, etc., is going to be just far more successful because people on the other side of the table, senior folks, they need a story that they can run with. This is an art form. This is not science. It's an art form. And there are a few principles that can work well. I'm going to share some of them with you. There's a couple of reasons. Sorry, what do I point this at? Quick introduction. I'm going to be here up on stage for the next 20 minutes odd, so you should know who it is that you're going to be listening to. That's me. Yeah? I'm here because, yes, I like data, right? I also like the Gyan giving, the consulting side of it. I've been doing this for 17 years, right? I'm sure that's a lot longer than a fair number of people out here. I work for a firm called Cartesian. That's a logo on the left. A whole bunch of people, sometimes, I don't know for what reason, they think that it depicts the moon shining in through a window. Do you see it that way? It's not supposed to be that. But I don't know why. It's not a moon shining in through the window, for God's sake. I like doodling and cartooning, so everything you see has been done by me. Yeah, this is the fun stuff of what I get to do. I like playing music a lot. And for some strange reason, I kind of tend to throw in a little Pac-Man logo into everything that I do. Don't ask me why. All right, that's me. There's a couple of reasons why I selected this topic. I've been talking, I came to Sci-Fi last year as well. It gets heavy, right? After a point of time, it's all good stuff. It's great stuff. But it does get heavy where there's just so much about how many devices are getting connected, and big data is big. And AI is coming and going to take over our jobs. So it's not a bad idea to have a session that's just a little different, so kind of lighten up a bit. And perhaps also, it'll be something new and different for everybody out there. Having said that, my first task was to kind of put a statement to what, at least to me, is good storytelling with data. I'm going to read this out. A compelling and purposeful narrative woven from the data. You just got to say it to yourself every morning. Can we do that? Every morning, just before you brush your teeth. Today I'm going to create a compelling and purposeful narrative from the data that I'm going to look at. It has to be compelling. It has to be something that people want to consume. And it has to have purpose. It sounds simple. It's not. It has to come from the data. It can't just be a story. Compelling, purposeful narrative woven from the data. That's what storytelling with data is to me. It means it requires a good story. Now, very often, storytelling is kind of confused with visualization. An important part of it, but you know what? You could tell a great story with the data with absolutely no visuals. And that makes it harder to crack. So when you've done a piece of analysis, can one weave the story with no visuals whatsoever? Let's see if we can try that as well. If you got great visualization, that helps. But it's not the necessary ingredient. There's visualization, there's the way you present it, and the story that envelopes all of it. Here's an example. I'll give you the example and then I'll tell you why I think this is a good example of storytelling. There's a hotel chain. Let's call it ABC Hotels. This is kind of obvious, right? Some guests are more valuable than the others. This happens in every single business. But they're not just more valuable, they're 27 times the value of a new guest. And when you tell this to the president of that hotel chain, his eyes kind of pop open and he says, 27 times, my God, what is it that we are doing different for these guys? Chances are nothing. All right. So let's call them something. Let's call them MVGs, our most valuable guests. We already have a good story going because this 27x number was kind of unearthed maybe 4 years ago. They still talk about it. So it's a number that's stuck in their heads and will stay stuck in their heads for a long time to come. It gets a little more interesting. We can identify a potential MVG in the very first stay. It's a standard analytical problem. You build a model and you look at what people did in their first transaction before they became MVGs, see if there's a pattern. What was interesting out here is, one marker was laundry. If you took laundry services in that very first stay, the probability of you becoming an MVG who was 27 times the value of everybody else was through the roof. There were other markers like Amex versus Master and Visa and so on and so forth. But you know what? Laundry is what people remember. Because it's just such an interesting story. My God, laundry? And then everybody, like, they kind of rationalize that, you know, you're right. The charges of getting laundry done at this hotel are just insane. They're through the roof. Nobody in the right minds would get laundry done. So if they're getting laundry done, obviously they're going to be like completely phenomenally high value guests. This little narrative has stayed with me, if nobody else, for these 4 years. I think I use it in every single pitch presentation because it's just such a nice story. And whether I'm talking to people from financial services or retail or whatever, the eyes light up. Laundry, oh my God, we need something like that in our industry. What's that one marker that we can latch onto and do something with? There are no visuals over here, and I'm sure some people will debate, is this a good story or not? But to me, this works because it's kind of stuck in the head. Whoops. Which gets me to one word. You know, this was kind of drilled into my head by a client who was at Yahoo. This is maybe about 10, 12 years ago. Every single meeting, the only thing he would ask me, nichod kya hai? Now, nichod is, I mean, what you really get when you squeeze it out and what's the essence of it all, right? It is the most brilliant test you can put to yourself, which is, what is the nichod of what I have done? And why this is important is, people in the analytics world are unfortunately too used to doing this, which is every single piece of analysis, every chart, every table has to be up there. We just don't know how to throw away stuff or keep it aside. We feel very compelled to present everything in the hope that something will stick. And come on guys, let's move away from there. You don't have to have a bunch of tables and charts. Just look for the nichod. This is a book which has 4,25,000 words. It has the word Gandalf 1,065 times. Is that a compelling and purposeful description of this book? You can guess the book, right? It's Lord of the Rings. But just imagine if they try to sell this book saying that an amazing book with 4,25,000 words in it. Makes no sense. Doesn't resonate with anyone. A book with 32,000 distinct words in it. Come on, who's going to buy it? Right? So, the effort or the variety of effort is not the key. You've got to get to the essence of it. So apply this test. Do it often. What is it that we really, really want to say about the data in as few words as possible? This is straightforward. And you know, if you're working with a team and they're constantly coming up to you with tables and slides, just challenge them on that as well. The nichod test works really, really well. Squeeze it down to the essence and make only that statement. 7 principles. They are things that I follow. Hopefully they'll resonate. The first one, you need to have a plot, right? So, and the plot is very rarely about the analysis, but it's about the business problem. So for example, you know, I asked a few people in my team, what was the meeting about? And sometimes the answer will be, We had a meeting in which we discussed what we were supposed to do in the month, and we went through it all, and we came up with a series of action points for next month, and we're going to now get together at some point of time and figure out what to do about it. I mean, that doesn't tell me anything. The real statement will be something about, we decided how we're going to reduce high-value customer churn, for example. Okay, one knows what you're talking about. Or we applied a model and we figured out how we can improve leads conversion from 1% to 5%. That makes sense. Now you got a thread, run with it. The other thing in a presentation is keep coming back to the plot. Otherwise, you keep losing people along the way. So tell people what you're going to tell them, then tell it to them, and then tell them what you've told them already. But keep coming back to the main plot point again and again and again. And stuff that doesn't fit, keep it away. It's not required for that one presentation. So have a thread. Starting well is the job half done. You could start with a bang and then kind of go back and say how we did it, or you could start small and build up towards it, but start strong. If you're going to present your data and you're on shaky ground on the very first slide, you're in trouble. And I think the mistake a lot of people do is, in fact, to start with data. Because data is a distraction. In a business meeting, you'll find more often than not, people will look at data, and rather than focusing on the story behind it, the question is, you know what, that number seems a little off. I mean, we all face that, right? And here you are trying to build up a story, and next thing you know, for the next 10 minutes, people are discussing, why is this number off? Call the sales guy. Why is this number looking different from your reports? And you have completely lost the meeting. So if you're in a situation where you're running the risk of people getting distracted by data, in fact, do not present the data. Avoid presenting the data. Start with the insight. Get everybody on your side first. Later, when it doesn't matter, whether the data matches that sales report, and that 10-minute conversation can happen later. Get them hooked early. So for example, this statement, we've used ML to improve leads conversion from 0.8% to 4.5% over a 6-month period. You got them? Now let's talk about how we went about it. This is a nice one, because we often miss this trick. All music is like this, right? So there's certain chords in music which build up tension, and then you hit that final major chord and it's resolution. Movies, books, right? Tension and resolution. Why not learn from that? You know what? When you're presenting your analysis, most of the time you're creating tension. Either you're unearthing something people didn't know, or you're throwing up stuff that shows a marketing manager or an ops person in bad light, this is going wrong and stuff like that. You're creating a lot of tension. Where's the resolution? And unfortunately, a lot of time, we miss this trick. If you're going to build up the tension, please focus on the resolution. And resolution is not a kind of wishy-washy statement that, you know what, we got this bunch of problems that the analysis has unearthed. Now, at some point of time, we'll gather together and figure out what to do about it. That's not resolution. That's kind of pushing back resolution to a future date. If you exit a meeting with this feeling of unansweredness of, oh my God, what are we supposed to do now? That's kind of ending on tension, not on resolution. Yeah? So create the tension, because that's drama. Build it up, then come in with the resolution. Great combination. This is a nice little trick. Same point, go really micro, micro, macro, micro, left, right, sideways. So you can start off with, for example, the really HVHF out there, that little example, high value, high frequency, best customers, whatever. They're important. They contribute 24% of our sales. 15% of them lapse every year. We're still fairly macro. For instance, at this store, 90% actually lapsed last year. So you've suddenly gone very micro and you talked about a specific store. You could go as micro and pick out one individual customer and say, you know what? This is a customer who shopped 8 times last year but came 0 times this year. It makes it real for the audience. When you put that one name or face or store to it, it's no longer macro. If we add one category to their basket, we reduce churn propensity by 5%. And if we reduce churn by 5%, we add 7 crores to the year's revenue. And we have 24,000 people waiting to whom we can add that one category. So you've kind of repeated the same point, multiple perspectives, and exited at some kind of resolution. Here's an action point. Here's something that we can do about it. This is probably the trickiest one, how to be relatable. Not everybody in the analytics field is relatable, I'm afraid, because I think we sometimes tend to hide too much behind analysis. We're not really looking out for that senior person in the room. What's his real, what is it that he wants to hear? Here's how, I would challenge myself. If you can end the meeting making that most important person in the room the champion of your story, that he's going to exit the room and he's going to repeat the story to every single person he meets, you've got it made. For example, that 24x. They're going to talk about it to everybody that they meet. So you have to be at some point in a meeting, you have to be relatable enough for that senior person to be the person who owns the narrative. It becomes his. He's going to go out there and talk about it. It's not something that he's just received from a bunch of smart people and he's like, okay, great, now somebody else is going to figure it out. The listener has to become the narrator when they exit the room. That's how relatable you have to be. And use magic dust. We got tons of it, guys. What's your favorite magic dust? I've found, and again, no sample size, etc. Random forest is great. Don't ask me why. But people who hear the word random forest, it just piques their curiosity. They're like, random forest, what's that? Collaborative filtering, not so hot. I don't know what it is about random forest. It's got this word random, people like that, and it's got forest, which makes it maybe, I don't know what. But try this, don't throw it in randomly, of course. But if you got a meeting and you're going to talk about ML, just drop the word random forest and see people's eyes light up. They'll be like, hang on, what's that all about? Yeah. We have got tons of magic dust. While I've been repeating this point of be relatable and make it easy for the business, use that magic dust because they also want to exit that meeting feeling that, you know what, I get this data analytics stuff. They may or may not, but they feel that they'll get it if they can go to the next person and say, you know what, we're using random forest. It works, right? The seventh one. It is just so easy to distract everybody in the room. And I've seen this happening to too many people. You start a point, and then you stop before it's over, and you start a new point, and you start a third point, because you're so busy kind of trying to cover all those numbers you have up on the slide. Because you're just so eager to not miss out on that one number that you worked on. So you just keep falling into rabbit holes by not making any point because you're distracted all the time. Now this is different from an interesting aside. You see the word walk on water? We are pitching to an airline. And suddenly, out of nowhere, there was a slide with just these three words, walk on water. And everybody's like, what are you talking about, walk on water? It was a reference to a 1992-93 British Airways campaign, which they did to customers saying that, we know you flew from London to New York, but we didn't see you on the way back. How do you get back? Did you walk on water? That was the campaign. And that was a great segue into an analysis of open jaws, of people who flew one way but didn't fly back, and how we can kind of figure out who are the ones more likely to show that and change that behavior. So an interesting aside, like a reference to a 20-year-old campaign or something, helps. But random asides, no. And I'm repeating that. The biggest distraction is data. So we have to kind of walk that line between presenting the data, but making sure we're not just throwing everything out there and letting people run away with the story. So that's those 7 principles. I've got one example after this, but have a thread, start well. Tension and resolution. We're too focused on the tension, we miss out on the resolution. Zoom in, zoom out, look at it from different perspectives. Keep kind of circling around that plot point. Make it relatable. That senior most person in the room has to become the person who will carry forward your story when he exits. Random forest, right? And distractions, very, very easy. And it's all kind of linked. I think the distractions largely come because data. That's the biggest distraction. Now, a nice thing for me, while I'm talking, I'm putting up another cartoon just for the people who are falling asleep. But anyway, it would be great if I could say that I'm good at this stuff. But I truly believe there's very, very few people. I don't think I've really come across anybody who's really, really good at this. But we can all get better. So I'm going to show you some examples, and they worked well for me. I don't think they're great storytelling yet. I think actually in a way it's okay. You know, all the speakers in the conference, none of us are great at what we do. We're all kind of getting there, and that's fine. Here's an example. It's for a beauty, a beauty retailer and stuff like that. And the one-line thing was, if the nichode was, if you add one product to the basket, you get that customer back 30 days sooner. That was the one-line thing of this analysis. So we started off with simple stuff saying that if they don't come back in 45 days, the return propensity to ever come back goes down to 20%. So you got a problem if people don't come back soon. Fair. But some people return quicker than the others. Those who buy hand creams or strawberry shower gel come back quickest. So this you've suddenly gone really micro. And the client can relate to this. Okay, I'm seeing my product shots. I know the names of what you're talking about. If you add one non-skincare category product, they come back 34 days quicker. And if they come back 34 days quicker, LTV goes up. And you can calculate that LTV impact in the long term. So you need to add one product. But the problem is we're just selling skincare. That's the single largest seller. We're not selling enough of other products. So now we're getting to this thing of we need to get them back quickly. We know they come back quicker if we add a product to the basket, but we're just not doing enough of it. Not everything is conducive to range expansion. So for example, if there's certain products selling, I know I can add more products to the basket, but if there's something else selling, it's a tough sell. They're just going to come in for that one product and go away. So some things sell solo, and some things, they sell in a much wider basket. We can show associations, we can do CF, whatever, but you can get on with the narrative and say, okay, here's the solution. Here are things that are associated. Here's how to create a campaign, etc. And again, that zoom in, zoom out, you can go down to, there are certain locations and certain stores where the catchment seems to be conducive to wider range. There are certain areas where this ain't happening. So you got to have a store-specific strategy as well. But, so this for me has a number of elements that I like, in the sense it's got a nice solid thread running through, which is really, we need people to come back quick. We need to add that one product to the basket and 34 days quicker. We know what works, doesn't work. We know where it works, doesn't work. Now let's get on with the action. The action stuff I haven't put out here. And that's what I had. That's my last slide. 7 principles. Compelling and purposeful narrative, something that we can wake up to every morning. And this one word, nichode, which I think is a really, really powerful word, and we can do with a lot more of it. Well, maybe apart from random forest, that works well as well. All right. Thank you.